A poor rancher risked his life for two Apache women. The chief's decision surprised everyone. Samuel Hayes woke early that morning, as he always did, with the sun barely peeking over the horizon. The sky was painted with soft streaks of pink and gold, a gentle reminder of the new day ahead. Samuel lived on the outskirts of a small Arizona town, far from the crowded streets and bustling markets. His life was simple, humble, and filled with hard work. Each day brought new challenges, but he met them with quiet determination. He was a man of few words, but his actions spoke louder than anyone in the town could imagine. Samuel's ranch was modest. A small wooden cabin sat in the middle of a dusty plot of land, surrounded by a few acres of grazing fields. The fences were old and weathered, but he repaired them diligently, knotting the ropes and hammering the posts until they were strong enough to hold his cattle. His herd was small, just enough to make a living and provide some security, but each cow was cared for as if it were part of his family. Samuel understood the value of life, whether it belonged to man, animal, or nature. Despite his poverty, he took pride in his work and the little he had, knowing that honesty and effort were worth more than gold. That morning, Samuel followed his usual routine. He checked on the cattle, made sure the water troughs were filled, and mended a section of fence that had been loosened by a recent windstorm. His hands were calloused and rough from years of labor, but his movements were careful and precise. Each task was performed with patience and thought, and he never rushed, even when the sun climbed high in the sky. For Samuel, there was a rhythm to the work, a quiet satisfaction in doing things right. As he finished repairing the fence, Samuel heard something unusual, a faint, almost imperceptible cry. At first he thought it might be a lost animal or the wind passing through the canyon, but the sound repeated, more urgent this time. It was a human voice, filled with fear and desperation. Samuel's heart skipped a beat. Without thinking, he grabbed his horse and rode toward the sound, his mind focused on one thought. Someone needed help, and he would do everything he could to help them. The path led him through a narrow gorge, where the river had carved a winding course through the rocks. The river was swollen from recent rains, its waters rushing violently over rocks and fallen branches. Samuel's horse struggled against the current as he guided it carefully along the slippery riverbank. The cries grew louder, clearer, and now he could make out two voices calling for help. His pulse quickened, but fear did not stop him. He had faced storms, wild animals, and dangerous terrain before, yet nothing compared to the thought of leaving someone in danger when he could act. Finally, Samuel reached a bend in the river and saw them, two women clinging to the edge of the riverbank, water swirling around their legs. They were terrified, their eyes wide with panic, hair plastered to their faces, and clothes soaked. Samuel immediately recognized them as Apache women from the nearby tribe. He could see the fear in their eyes, not just of the river, but of being far from home, isolated and vulnerable. He took a deep breath and assessed the situation. The river was dangerous, but Samuel had faced many risks before, and he knew he had to act quickly. Without hesitation, Samuel urged his horse into the rushing waters. The current was strong, and the cold water bit at his legs as he rode closer to the women. Every step was a struggle, the horse stumbling on slippery rocks, water swirling around them both. Samuel reached out, calling to the women to grab his hands. Their fingers were trembling, but they held on, trusting the stranger who had come to their aid. Slowly, carefully, Samuel guided them toward the riverbank, maneuvering through the fast currents with skill and determination. Each moment felt like an eternity, yet Samuel remained focused, never allowing panic to take hold. Finally, they reached a safer spot, where the water was shallow and the ground firmer. Samuel helped the women climb onto solid earth, their bodies shaking from the cold and exhaustion. He wrapped his coat around them, offering warmth and comfort. The women clung to each other, grateful yet still fearful, glancing nervously at the wild river behind them. Samuel's heart swelled with relief. The immediate danger was over, but he knew they still needed care, shelter, and food. Samuel led them back to his ranch, guiding his horse carefully along the uneven path. The women were quiet at first, still in shock, but gradually they began to speak, their voices soft and cautious. They explained that they had been collecting water upstream when the river rose unexpectedly, catching them by surprise. Samuel listened attentively, nodding and reassuring them that they were safe now. He could see the gratitude in their eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the courage and risk he had taken. Once at the cabin, Samuel made a fire to warm them and offered blankets to dry off. He cooked a simple meal with what little food he had, cornbread, dried meat, and fresh water. The women ate slowly, their movements careful and tentative, but Samuel spoke gently, sharing small stories about life on the ranch, the animals, and the land. The conversation helped ease their fear, and a sense of calm began to settle over the cabin. Samuel watched them carefully, ensuring they were comfortable and safe. As the day turned to evening, Samuel reflected on what had happened. He was a poor man with little wealth or comfort, yet he had found a sense of purpose in helping these women. It did not matter that he had risked his life, that the river had nearly swept him away, or that he would be exhausted for days to come. What mattered was that he had acted when it was needed, showing compassion and bravery without expecting anything in return. For Samuel, this was the essence of being human, helping others when they could not help themselves. News of the rescue began to spread through the small town. Neighbors whispered about Samuel's courage, astonished that a poor rancher had risked his life for strangers. Some were inspired, others skeptical, but all agreed that his actions were remarkable. Samuel, however, did not seek recognition. He returned to his daily routines, tending to the cattle, mending fences, and maintaining his humble life. Yet deep inside he felt a quiet pride, a knowledge that he had done something meaningful, something that reflected his character. The Apache women stayed at the ranch that night, recovering from the ordeal. They spoke little, but their eyes conveyed gratitude and trust. Samuel offered them rest and comfort, allowing them space while ensuring their safety. Outside, the river roared under the moonlight, a reminder of the danger that had almost claimed their lives. But inside, by the warmth of the fire, there was a sense of peace, a connection formed through courage, empathy, and the human instinct to protect one another. As Samuel finally settled into his own bed that night, he reflected on the day's events. Life on the ranch was often lonely and challenging, yet moments like these gave it meaning. He had faced danger without hesitation, guided by a sense of duty and compassion. The river had tested him, the situation had been perilous, yet he had prevailed. And in doing so, he had formed a bond with strangers that would shape the coming days in ways he could not yet imagine. In the quiet of the night, Samuel could hear the soft breathing of the women in the next room, a comforting sound that reminded him of the lives he had saved. The stars outside shone brightly, casting a silver glow over the rugged land. Samuel knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, perhaps even more danger, but he was ready. Courage, he understood, was not about seeking adventure or glory. It was about standing firm when others were in need, about making choices that reflected one's humanity. And on that night, Samuel Hayes felt that he had truly lived up to those ideals. Samuel had barely finished tending to the fire when he turned to see the two women, still wrapped in the heavy blankets he had offered, sitting quietly near the cabin wall. Their faces, though pale and damp from the river, reflected a mix of fear, relief, and curiosity. Samuel knew it would take time for them to feel safe, and he had no intention of rushing them. He moved about the small cabin, preparing a simple meal from the little he had. The smell of warm cornbread and cooked meat soon filled the room, mingling with the scent of wet earth and the crisp mountain air that had followed them from the river. The women watched him with careful eyes, their expressions guarded but softening slowly. They were silent at first, hesitant to speak to a stranger who had risked his life to save them. Samuel noticed their unease and offered a gentle smile. "Eat slowly," he said, his voice steady and calm. "You've been through a lot today. You need strength." He placed a small wooden bowl of food before each of them. Though modest, the food was warm and filling, and they began to eat, their movements tentative at first but gradually more relaxed as hunger overcame fear. As they ate, Samuel quietly observed them. He could see that one was older, perhaps in her mid-30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and a quiet strength in her posture. The other was younger, maybe in her early 20s, trembling slightly but displaying a resilience that mirrored her companion. Samuel guessed they were sisters or close relatives, though he did not ask directly. Instead, he offered small talk, describing the simple life on the ranch, the cattle he tended, and the beauty of the surrounding hills. His words were calm and steady, intended to soothe and reassure, and slowly the women began to respond. The older woman spoke first, her voice soft but cautious. We did not expect anyone to come," she said, glancing at Samuel with a mixture of gratitude and wonder. "The river, it came so fast." Her English was broken but understandable. Samuel nodded, recognizing the fear she had endured. "I know," he replied. "It was dangerous, but you are safe now. That is what matters." The younger woman spoke next, her words halting but clear. "Thank you," she whispered, barely audible, yet filled with sincerity. Samuel simply nodded, understanding that words were unnecessary to convey the depth of his intentions. After the meal, Samuel helped them to dry off as best he could. He provided extra blankets, and together they sat by the fire, allowing the warmth to seep into their chilled bones. Outside, the river continued its relentless journey, the sound of rushing water a reminder of the danger that had been narrowly avoided. Samuel's heart still beat rapidly when he recalled the moments in the river, the current's strength, the cold biting his legs, and the desperate grip of the women's hands. He had faced peril many times, but this had been different. He had no choice but to act, guided by instinct and a deep sense of responsibility. As evening fell, the cabin took on a peaceful, almost magical quality. The firelight flickered across the wooden walls, casting dancing shadows that seemed to calm the women further. Samuel shared stories of his life, recounting small, ordinary events, the birth of a calf, a stubborn cow that refused to be herded, the beauty of sunrise over the hills. These stories, though simple, drew the women in. They listened intently, their initial fear replaced by curiosity and admiration. Samuel noticed the subtle shift in their expressions, the way their shoulders relaxed, the way they began to trust him. It was a quiet transformation, born of compassion and the instinct to protect. The night grew deeper, and Samuel could see that the women were exhausted from the day's ordeal. He prepared simple bedding for them in a corner of the cabin, ensuring they were comfortable and warm. "Rest now," he said gently. "You've been through a lot today, and your strength will return with sleep." The women nodded, grateful, and slowly drifted off, their breathing steadying as they surrendered to slumber. Samuel remained awake for a while longer, watching over them, ensuring the fire remained strong and reflecting on the day's events. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing he had done the right thing. The next morning, Samuel rose before the sun, as was his custom. He tended to his cattle, checked the fences, and prepared a fresh meal for the women. When he returned to the cabin, they were awake, wrapped in blankets, their eyes brighter than the day before. They moved with more confidence, their fear replaced by cautious trust. Samuel greeted them with a smile, offering bread, fruit, and water. The women accepted, and this simple act of care created a bond that words could not fully describe. Over the next few days, Samuel continued to care for them. He taught them how to find herbs for minor ailments, how to tend to small chores around the ranch, and shared the rhythm of his daily life. The women, in turn, told Samuel about their lives, their family, and their tribe. They spoke of traditions, stories of the land, and the respect they held for nature and their ancestors. Samuel listened with genuine interest, absorbing every detail. Though he did not always understand every word or custom, he respected their culture and treated them with dignity and kindness. Word of the rescue began to spread beyond Samuel's immediate neighbors. Townsfolk spoke in hushed tones about the poor rancher who had risked his life for two Apache women. Some admired his bravery, others wondered at his audacity, but all were intrigued. Samuel, however, remained humble. He never sought praise or attention. For him, the act of saving the women was not heroic. It was simply what he believed was right. Yet the story began to draw attention, and soon, whispers of admiration reached even the town's more influential citizens. During this time, Samuel noticed that the women began to adapt to the rhythm of the ranch. They helped with chores in small ways, fetching water, preparing simple meals, and learning to care for the animals. They laughed quietly at his occasional clumsiness, and he, in turn, marveled at their resilience and resourcefulness. The cabin, once lonely and silent, was now filled with a soft warmth, a sense of life and shared purpose. Samuel realized that this unexpected turn of events had brought a sense of companionship and meaning to his life, something he had not known he was missing. One afternoon, as Samuel worked in the fields, a sudden commotion near the river caught his attention. He turned to see figures approaching from the distance, mounted warriors, moving swiftly and with purpose. Samuel's heart skipped a beat. He recognized them as members of the Apache tribe, and he knew that their arrival could bring tension. He quickly guided the women inside the cabin, offering reassurance and urging calm. The older woman's eyes widened with concern, while the younger one held her hand, drawing strength from her presence. Samuel knew that the coming encounter would require patience, courage, and careful words. The warriors arrived at the cabin's edge, observing silently. Samuel stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of peace. He spoke slowly, explaining that he had saved the women from the river and provided them shelter. The warriors listened intently, their expressions unreadable. For several tense moments, silence hung in the air. The women remained close to Samuel, trusting him implicitly. Then slowly, one of the warriors spoke to the others, and the group began to relax, recognizing the truth in Samuel's words. Though wary, they understood that he had acted out of compassion, not malice. By the end of the day, the initial tension had eased. The women had recovered enough to speak with their tribe members, recounting the events of the river and Samuel's bravery. The warriors listened, nodding with respect, and the atmosphere shifted from suspicion to cautious admiration. Samuel realized that his actions had not only saved lives, but had also begun to build a bridge of trust between himself and the tribe. Though the path ahead was uncertain, he felt a quiet hope that understanding and goodwill could prevail. As night fell, Samuel sat by the fire once more, watching the women sleep peacefully. The events of the past days had tested courage, resilience, and compassion. Samuel understood that life often brought unexpected challenges, but it also presented opportunities to act with integrity and humanity. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had made a difference in the lives of two strangers, and perhaps in the hearts of a tribe that valued honor and bravery above all else. For Samuel Hayes, this was only the beginning of a story that would touch many lives, a story born from courage, kindness, and the simple act of reaching out to help those in need. The morning sun rose slowly over the hills, casting long shadows across the dusty trails leading to Samuel Hayes' humble ranch. Samuel had been awake for hours, tending to the cattle and repairing a section of fence near the river. The events of the past few days weighed heavily on his mind. He had saved the two Apache women, provided them shelter, and slowly earned their trust. But he also knew that their tribe might soon arrive to check on them. Samuel understood the importance of honor and respect in the Apache culture, and he worried about how his actions would be received. By mid-morning, distant sounds of hooves echoed across the plains. Samuel paused, shielding his eyes from the sun as he looked toward the horizon. A group of mounted warriors was approaching, riding with a quiet, purposeful intensity that immediately drew his attention. Their presence was commanding, and the horses moved with a disciplined strength that spoke of generations trained for survival in the harsh terrain. Samuel felt a twinge of anxiety. He knew that this encounter could change everything. His courage would be tested not just by nature, but by the judgment of the tribe itself. Samuel quickly returned to the cabin, finding the two women awake and alert. Their expressions reflected a mix of curiosity and concern. "They are coming," Samuel said quietly. "The warriors from your tribe, we must be calm and respectful." The older woman nodded, her hands clasped tightly, while the younger one remained silent, watching the distant riders with wide eyes. Samuel motioned for them to stay inside, keeping a safe distance near the doorway while he stepped out to meet the approaching group. The warriors reached the cabin, dismounting gracefully with a precision that spoke of their training and experience. Their eyes scanned the surroundings carefully, noting every detail of the ranch, the horses, and the cabin itself. Samuel greeted them respectfully, keeping his hands visible and his voice steady. "I am Samuel Hayes," he said. "I found your people in danger by the river and brought them here to safety. They are unharmed now and resting." For a tense moment, there was silence. The warriors exchanged glances, their faces revealing little, but their eyes were sharp, assessing Samuel's character. The older woman stepped forward, speaking in her language, recounting the events of the river and how Samuel had risked his life to save them. Samuel watched as the warriors listened intently, their expressions slowly softening as they realized the truth of her words. Yet he knew the most critical judgment had not yet come. The chief of the tribe, whose presence commanded respect and authority, had not yet spoken. Finally, the chief appeared, riding slightly ahead of the rest of the group. His posture was upright, his gaze steady and unyielding. Samuel felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. He had heard stories of the chief's wisdom, fairness, and strict sense of honor. The men of the tribe parted respectfully as the chief approached, signaling that the moment of judgment had arrived. Samuel straightened his back, keeping his voice calm and clear. "I acted to save these women because they were in danger. I did what anyone should do. I did not seek reward or recognition. I only wanted to help." The chief studied him silently, his eyes sharp yet unreadable. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of sage and dust across the plains. Samuel could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He remained composed, understanding that any sign of fear or hesitation could be interpreted as disrespect. The chief's gaze moved from Samuel to the women, who nodded quietly in affirmation. Their eyes reflected trust and gratitude, silently vouching for the rancher's honesty and bravery. The warriors watched silently, waiting for the chief's decision. The air was thick with tension, every movement amplified by the anticipation of judgment. Samuel could hear the faint rustle of leaves in the nearby trees, the soft snort of the horses, and the distant flow of the river. Each sound seemed magnified in the silence that hung between him and the chief. The two women remained close to Samuel, drawing strength from his calm presence, while he, in turn, felt a protective responsibility for their safety. Finally, the chief spoke, his voice deep and resonant, commanding attention without anger or haste. He asked the women to recount the events once more, and they did so carefully, emphasizing Samuel's courage, quick thinking, and selflessness. The chief listened with unwavering focus, occasionally nodding or glancing at the warriors behind him. When the account was finished, the chief turned his gaze to Samuel, studying him in a way that seemed to see beyond words, beyond actions, to the core of his character. "Your actions were not simple," the chief said slowly. "To risk one's life for strangers requires courage and honor. Many would have hesitated. Few would have acted as you did." Samuel felt a mixture of relief and humility. He bowed slightly in respect, understanding the gravity of the chief's words. The chief continued, speaking of the values that guided their tribe: respect for life, bravery in the face of danger, and integrity in one's actions. Samuel listened intently, realizing that these were the principles that had shaped the judgment he now received. The women stepped forward, adding their voices to the account. They spoke of Samuel's calmness in the river, his unwavering determination, and the care he had shown afterward. The chief nodded again, acknowledging their words with quiet dignity. The warriors behind him began to relax, sensing that their leader's judgment was leaning toward favor. Yet, the final decision was not yet spoken, and Samuel felt the weight of every second, every glance, every subtle gesture. After a long pause, the chief finally addressed Samuel directly. "You acted with no thought of reward, only with the courage to do what was right. That is the measure of a true heart. You have shown respect for life, for others, and for the land. Your actions honor not only yourself but all who witness them." Samuel felt a sense of awe and humility wash over him. The chief's words were unexpected, powerful, and filled with a depth of understanding that few could appreciate. The chief's declaration was met with a mixture of surprise and admiration from the warriors. They whispered among themselves, acknowledging the unusual nature of the encounter. The women's eyes shone with gratitude, and Samuel felt a warmth in his chest that went beyond pride. He had faced danger, uncertainty, and the scrutiny of a powerful tribe, yet he had emerged not only unharmed but respected. The chief's decision was a testament to the power of courage, compassion, and integrity. The chief then performed a symbolic gesture, presenting Samuel with a handcrafted item, a small necklace made of beads and carved wood. It was a token of respect and trust, a symbol of the bond now formed between Samuel and the tribe. The women smiled, their expressions reflecting pride and relief, knowing that their rescuer had been recognized in a way that transcended words. Samuel accepted the gift humbly, understanding its significance not as a reward, but as an acknowledgement of shared values and mutual respect. The warriors began to mount their horses again, preparing to return to their village. The chief lingered for a moment, offering final words of wisdom. "Bravery is not measured by wealth or strength alone," he said. "It is measured by the courage to act when others cannot, and by the heart that guides those actions." Samuel nodded, deeply moved. The chief's words echoed in his mind, a reminder that true heroism comes not from desire for recognition, but from doing what is right, even when it is difficult or dangerous. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden light across the ranch, the tribe departed, leaving Samuel with the two women. The air seemed lighter, the tension of the morning replaced by a quiet peace. Samuel led the women back into the cabin, offering warmth, food, and comfort. They spoke softly, recounting their gratitude and admiration, while Samuel remained modest, insisting that he had only done what anyone would have done. Yet deep inside, he felt a quiet pride, knowing that his actions had created a bridge between two worlds, built on trust, courage, and respect. The events of that day would remain etched in Samuel's memory forever. He had faced the fear of the unknown, risked his life to save others, and earned the respect of a powerful tribe. But more than that, he had learned the true meaning of honor, courage, and compassion. The chief's words and the tribe's recognition reminded him that heroism is not defined by wealth, status, or power, but by the choices we make when others are in need. As night fell, Samuel sat by the fire once more, watching the women rest peacefully. The river, now calm, whispered softly in the distance, carrying with it the memory of danger overcome and lives saved. Samuel knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had acted with courage, compassion, and integrity, and the chief's judgment had affirmed the value of those choices. In that quiet moment, Samuel understood that true bravery is timeless, and that the bonds formed through selfless acts of courage can endure far beyond the events that create them. The morning after the tribe's visit dawned bright and clear, but Samuel Hayes could not shake the lingering tension from the previous day. Although the warriors had left and the chief had offered words of respect, Samuel understood that in the world of honor and tradition, words alone were not enough. True recognition came from actions, from decisions that reflected the deepest values of a tribe and a community. Samuel had saved the two women from the river, but now he needed to understand what the chief truly thought of him. The women were awake early, quietly preparing a small breakfast with Samuel's help. Their movements were careful but confident, reflecting a sense of safety and trust that had grown over the past days. The younger woman looked at Samuel, her eyes filled with admiration and a hint of worry. "The chief, he will decide," she said softly. Samuel nodded. He had long understood that in the Apache culture, respect and judgment were measured carefully, and often in ways outsiders could not immediately understand. By mid-morning, a sudden sound of hooves alerted Samuel that the tribe had returned. This time, it was not just the warriors but the chief himself, riding ahead with a small group. Samuel felt his heart tighten. He led the women to the edge of the cabin, ensuring they remained calm. Their expressions mirrored his own mixture of anticipation and nervousness. Samuel knew that the chief's visit was deliberate and that a momentous decision was about to be made, one that could change the relationship between him, the women, and the tribe forever. The chief approached slowly, his horse moving with steady, dignified grace. His eyes, sharp and wise, assessed Samuel in silence. He dismounted and stepped forward, the weight of his presence commanding respect without force. Samuel felt the gravity of the moment pressing down on him. He straightened his back, keeping his voice steady and his hands visible. "I am Samuel Hayes," he said quietly. "I only did what anyone should do when others are in danger. I ask nothing in return." The chief observed him silently for several moments, as if searching for something deeper within Samuel's heart. Then he motioned for the women to step forward. They recounted the events once again, the rushing river, their fear, and Samuel's courageous actions. Their voices, though calm, carried emotion and gratitude. The chief listened intently, nodding occasionally, but his expression remained unreadable. Samuel felt the tension rising once more. Every fiber of his being was aware of the importance of the moment. The tribe's judgment could honor him, or if misunderstood could bring suspicion or doubt. Finally, the chief spoke, his voice resonant and deliberate. "Courage is measured not by wealth, not by strength, but by the willingness to act when others cannot. You, Samuel Hayes, risked your life without hesitation to save those in need. That is the mark of a true heart." Samuel felt a wave of relief, but he remained composed, bowing slightly in respect. The chief continued, his tone firm yet kind. "Your actions reflect values that our tribe holds dear: honor, compassion, and integrity. Few outside our people understand these qualities, yet you have shown them clearly." The women smiled softly, their eyes reflecting pride and relief. Samuel noticed the younger one glancing at him, her expression conveying a quiet, heartfelt thanks. He had done what he believed was right, and now it seemed that the tribe not only recognized his courage but respected it deeply. The chief's words were powerful, but Samuel knew that in Apache culture, respect was often shown through symbolic acts as much as through speech. He waited quietly, sensing that the next moment would define the relationship between himself and the tribe. Then, in a gesture that surprised Samuel, The chief reached into a small pouch at his side and pulled out a handcrafted necklace made of beads, carved wood, and leather. He held it out carefully, as if presenting a treasure of great significance. "This is for you," the chief said. "It is a symbol of trust, honor, and respect. You have earned the friendship of our people, and this gift is a reminder of the bond formed through courage and compassion." Samuel felt his throat tighten. He took the necklace with both hands, bowing deeply, understanding that this was far more than a gift. It was an acknowledgement of his integrity and bravery. The chief continued, addressing the warriors behind him. "Let all who witness this know that true bravery is measured by the willingness to protect life and act with honor. Samuel Hayes has shown us the path of courage without expectation, and his actions will be remembered by our people." The warriors nodded in quiet agreement, their expressions filled with respect. Samuel glanced at the women, who were smiling gently, their eyes shining with gratitude. In that moment, a sense of peace settled over the ranch, replacing the tension that had hung heavily in the air since the river incident. The chief then shared words that Samuel would remember for the rest of his life. "Bravery is not a solitary act," he said. "It is the courage to reach beyond fear and extend your heart to others. You have proven that your spirit aligns with our values, and for that, you are welcomed among us." Samuel felt a deep sense of humility. He had never considered himself a hero. He had acted out of instinct, compassion, and a sense of duty. Yet the chief's recognition made him realize that even simple acts of kindness could carry profound meaning, shaping connections and bridging worlds. As the chief prepared to depart, he left Samuel with a final thought. The bond formed today is not fleeting. Honor those who depend on your courage, and remember that trust is built through action. You have proven that humanity transcends boundaries, and that the heart can guide decisions when fear or doubt might otherwise prevail. Samuel nodded silently, moved by the chief's wisdom. The women stepped forward to bid farewell, expressing gratitude that seemed deeper than words. Samuel understood that the chief's decision had not only acknowledged his actions, but had strengthened the relationship between him, the women, and their tribe. After the tribe departed, Samuel returned to the cabin with the women. The atmosphere was calm, yet the significance of the morning lingered in the air. Samuel led them to the fire, offering warmth and a simple meal. They spoke softly, recounting their relief and appreciation, while Samuel listened, quietly absorbing their words. Though he insisted that he had done nothing extraordinary, he could see the impact of his actions reflected in their faces. A bond had been formed, one that was built on trust, bravery, and shared humanity. Over the following days, Samuel noticed subtle changes in the women's behavior. They moved with confidence, helping with chores around the ranch, fetching water, tending to small tasks, and learning the rhythms of ranch life. Their laughter, soft and melodic, brought a sense of life and companionship to Samuel's once lonely cabin. He found himself quietly amazed by their resilience, intelligence, and resourcefulness. Though they were far from home, they adapted with courage and grace, inspired by the safety and care Samuel had provided. Word of the chief's decision spread quickly through the town and surrounding areas. Neighbors and travelers spoke in astonishment about the poor rancher who had risked his life and earned the respect of a powerful Apache chief. Some were amazed at the courage it took to act without hesitation, while others marveled at the unexpected acknowledgement from a tribal leader. Yet Samuel remained humble. For him, the chief's recognition was not a reward. It was a reflection of shared values, a reminder that true bravery is measured by action, not by fame or fortune. As the sun set over the rolling hills, casting long shadows across the ranch, Samuel sat quietly by the fire. The necklace gifted by the chief rested on his chest, a tangible reminder of honor, courage, and trust. The two women slept nearby, peaceful and safe, their lives forever changed by the events of the past days. Samuel reflected on the lessons learned. That courage often comes quietly, that kindness has power beyond measure, and that true respect is earned through integrity, compassion, and action. In that moment, Samuel Hayes understood that life is shaped not by wealth, status, or recognition, but by the choices one makes when others are in need. He had faced danger, uncertainty, and the scrutiny of a powerful tribe, yet he had acted with compassion and courage. The chief's decision had not only affirmed his actions, but had created a bridge of trust between communities, built on honor, bravery, and shared humanity. That night, as Samuel lay beneath the stars, he felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. The river's roar was now a distant memory, replaced by a calm, steady rhythm of life on the ranch. He had acted with integrity, protected the vulnerable, and earned respect that transcended boundaries. The chief's surprising decision had changed more than the perception of a poor rancher. It had demonstrated the power of courage, the importance of trust, and the enduring value of human kindness.